everyone. I am Dr. Monty Naruka, MD in Biochemistry. Under Aakash PG Plus, I will be discussing with you the INI-CET 2020 Biochemistry questions. Okay. So, let me clarify one thing here, that the questions are recall questions and the questions and options, they can be here and there. But the facts and concepts, as you all know, will always remain the same. Okay. So, I will be focusing more on the facts and concepts related to these questions, and if you understand these well, this will definitely going to help you in your forthcoming exam. Okay. So, let us begin. So, the first question was, which of the following enzymes of glucose metabolism participate in gluconeogenesis? So, some of the enzymes has been listed and we have to choose more than one option for the one which go for the gluconeogenic reactions. So, Pepsi-K is a gluconeogenic enzyme. Glucose phosphatase, this is also gluconeogenic. Hexokinase is a glycolytic enzyme. Okay, so this won't be the option. Pyruvate carboxylase is also a gluconeogenic enzyme, and glucose 6-phosphate, it seems this was the option. So, this is a substrate, this is not even an enzyme. If it would have been glucose 6-phosphatase, then this also was a gluconeogenic enzyme, right? Glucose phosphatase is one of the option anyway, but one of the option as told was glucose 6-phosphate, that is the substrate. So, the correct options are Pepsi-K, glucose phosphatase and pyruvate carboxylase. So, the answer will be A, B, D, which is option C. Now, this is a glycolytic and gluconeogenesis together. So, the reversible step are same for both the pathways, but the one which are irreversible, we need to focus on that, and we need to always remember the irreversible steps of glycolysis and gluconeogenesis both. Okay. So, I am just taking you to the irreversible steps. The first one is hexokinase. Hexokinase in your glycolysis. Okay. So, hexokinase, which converts the glucose to glucose 6-phosphate, is an irreversible enzyme in glycolysis. Next is your PFK, that is your phosphofructokinase 1, PFK1 is the second irreversible step, and the final irreversible step in glycolysis is pyruvate kinase. So, these three enzymes you have to memorize it very well. Okay. Now, we are coming to the irreversible steps of gluconeogenesis, and let me tell you that these pathways are in opposite direction, as you can see, and you know this very well. Yeah. So, glycolysis goes from glucose to pyruvate, and from pyruvate to the conversion of glucose is your gluconeogenesis, and that is the reason I have taken them together. And the irreversible steps of glycolysis has to be circumvented by the gluconeogenic enzymes. So, 3 enzymes are here. So, should we have 3? No, we have 4 enzymes, 4 irreversible enzymes of gluconeogenesis. For the reaction of pyruvate kinase, we have 2 steps of irreversible enzymes. Okay. So, this pyruvate kinase is circumvented by the gluconeogenic enzyme, and we have 2 enzymes here, that is pyruvate carboxylase, which converts pyruvate to oxaloacetate and oxaloacetate to phosphoenol pyruvate, which is Pepsi-K, which was there in the option as well. So, these are the 2 irreversible steps, the first 2 irreversible steps of the gluconeogenesis, and we have 2 more enzymes. One is fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, which converts fructose 1,6-bisphosphate to fructose 6-phosphate, and we have one more irreversible step here, which is glucose 6-phosphatase, right. So, 3 irreversible steps and 3 irreversible enzymes for glycolysis, and 4 irreversible steps and 4 irreversible enzymes for gluconeogenesis. We have to memorize it very nicely. Okay. So, I am just revising it. Hexokinase, phosphofructokinase 1, PFK1 and pyruvate kinase, these are for the glycolysis, And for gluconeogenesis, we have pyruvate carboxylase, we have PepsiK, we have fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase and glucose 6-phosphatase, right? You have to memorize it. One more thing here, I would like to just make you clear that pyruvate to oxaloacetate, this conversion happens in mitochondria. And from mitochondria, the oxaloacetate has to come out in the cytosol, okay, to go for the rest of the reactions of gluconeogenesis. So, with the malate shuttle and malate getting converted to oxaloacetate inside the mitochondria first, oxaloacetate to malate, and then malate will be coming out to the cytosol, and with the cytosolic enzyme, cytosolic counterpart of the MDH, that is malate dehydrogenase, it will get converted back to oxaloacetate, that is malate to oxaloacetate. So, pyruvate to oxaloacetate, this is formed, and from oxaloacetate malate is formed. These two reactions, these are happening inside the mitochondria, okay, this is your mitochondria, and then malate will be coming out here with the malate shuttle, and with the help of malate dehydrogenase, the cytosolic counterpart. We have MDH here also, which is the mitochondrial counterpart. It will get converted to oxaloacetate, and the rest of the reactions will be happening in the cytosol, right? So, with these concepts and facts, you can never go wrong with these kind of questions, okay? There are simple facts, simple concepts which you need to understand. So, now we will move to the next question. Next question is from enzymes. In the below table, Km and Kcat values were given, and what they were asking was the catalytic efficiency. Now, we had to know one thing, that the catalytic efficiency is Kcat by Km is your catalytic efficiency. So, you had to know this formula, okay. If you know this formula, then you could have come up with the correct answer, right. We had to know the catalytic efficiency of which of the following enzyme is the maximum, right. One more thing here, micrograms, micrograms and micrograms, one is only nanogram. So, just looking at this question, I can know that the one which has very low Km, that is nanogram, will have the most efficient catalytic power, catalytic efficiency, okay, and the one which is having more Kcat. So, Kcat is more or less same here and 50-20, but we always have to go with the correct calculations for these kind of questions, okay. We cannot go with this random manipulation. So, we will go with the calculation and we will understand it better. So, Kcat by Km for this will be 20 upon 0.4, that will make up to 50, and Kcat by Km, catalytic efficiency is always dealt with the reciprocal type. So, the unit will be same, we need not worry about that. Second one will be 50 upon, now this 200 nanogram will be converting it into micrograms. So, 200 nanograms if I have to convert, I have to multiply it with 10 to the power 3. So, I have to multiply it by 10 to the power 3 in the denominator. So, I have to do the same thing in the numerator as well, right. So, I will be getting 50,000 and 200, because now this is equivalent to other parts also. All of them are in the microgram state. Now, I will calculate and come to the answer which is 250. So, for the B part it is 250. Third one is 200 upon 2, which is 100, and the last one is 200 upon 4. So, this will be 50, right. So, the maximum catalytic efficiency is that of B. I told you in the beginning also, because nanogram is far less than microgram, we could have come to the conclusion. But we need to have the proper calculation and we have to come to the accurate answer always, okay. So, here in this question what you had to know was this formula and you had to come up with the correct calculations. We are moving to the next question. Which of the following processes DNA methylation is not involved? So, seeing the options, gene silencing is involved with the DNA methylation, chromatin remodeling is involved, it is RNA splicing and DNA base excision repair, that is BER, which is not related with the methylation process. So, BD, that means C should be the answer. We will come to the explanation and we will try understand little bit about these things, okay. So, this is a diagram which is showing gene silencing and chromatin remodeling together. So, these are two opposite things, two opposite processes. Gene silencing is when the gene is switched off. So, when the gene is switched off, it will be condensed. It is condensed, so it will be deacetylated. What will be deacetylated? The histone part. Histones are deacetylated and the cytosins are methylated. The opposite will happen in chromatin remodeling. That means the chromatin is switched on, it is open. This was condensed, so this is open. This was deacetylated, so this is acetylated, the histone part. And this was methylated, the cytosine part. So, this will be unmethylated. So, two opposite things. What we need to remember is gene silencing. With silence, you can always remember silence means that the gene is switched off. When it is switched off, it will be condensed. When it is condensed, it will have two things. Now, you have to remember this. You can just remember it with SDM, how I remember always, SDM. S is for silencing, D is for deacetylated, M is for methylated. That means this is methylated, the cytosins, and deacetylated, that is the histones. The opposite things you need to memorize only one part. The second part you always will remember that it is opposite of the one which I have remembered. Okay? So, these two are associated with methylation, DNA methylation. Okay? So, this three things if you remember will always help you solving other types of questions also. Now, this is base excision repair. DNA base excision repair is when the base is damaged or we need to substitute only one nucleotide. There is a damaged base, it has to be removed and it has to be repaired. So, this process does not require any kind of DNA methylation. Let me explain this process very shortly with you. So, we have a damaged base which is requiring a base excision repair, that is BER. Okay. So, now DNA glycosylase is the enzyme which removes the damaged base, and so we are left with the abasic site. This is the abasic site, and now we have another enzyme endonuclease which will form a nick. You remember endonuclease always forms a nick, right, in the chromatin. So, it will form the nick and the DNA polymerase will cause the hybridization with the correct match of the nucleotide and complementary to the one which is there in the above DNA part. Okay. So, this DNA polymerase will cause the hybridization and DNA ligase will seal the nick formed by the endonuclease. So, this is how BER will be finished. This is not taking any methylation process, so we have not included in the options. Now, one more option was there about the RNA splicing. What do we mean by RNA splicing? RNA splicing is the process when the intron is removed by forming the spliceosome and the exons, they are coming together to form the messenger RNA. So, this is the pre-messenger RNA, this is the mature messenger RNA. Okay. Now, here this intron, because it has to be removed, we are forming a spliceosome with the help of snRNPs. What is snRNPs? This is small nuclear ribonucleoproteins. Now, with the help of this, with the intron, they form a spliceosome, cut it out, and this is coming out as a lariat shape, and the exons, they are coming together and they are combining to form the mature RNA. So, this is the process of RNA splicing. Again, there is no methylation, you can easily see, right. So, we have not included in the options, but you have to know little bit about RNA splicing and you had to know about the BER also. So, I have explained you little part of it. Now, another question asked was about the PCR, and in the PCR they had asked the events which happen in sequence. So in broad aspect, the PCR is actually helping us. What does it do? It causes the amplification of the target DNAs, and for this we have a sequence of process, that is denaturation, annealing and elongation. Now here in the question, one more process they have added is hybridization. So you have to evaluate that this hybridization will always come after annealing, because once the primer has come and attached, only then the hybridization will start, and that will lead to the elongation process, right. So this one part was something which you had to just apply your little of common sense and have come to the correct decision, okay. So here the first process is denaturation, we know. So the denaturant first is there in B and D. Next is hybridization, no, but before hybridization we need to have annealing. So the correct option will be D, because this is following the correct sequence. First denaturation, then annealing, and then hybridization, and finally elongation. So this should be the answer. I'll take you to the little aspect part, that is the conceptual things, right, and we'll little bit have a knowledge about it. So PCR is a method to amplify a target DNA sequence. It was invented by Kari B. Mullis. This is an MCQ which is asked. Then as short as 50 to 100 base pair to as long as 10 kilo base pair can be amplified through this process. Each cycle takes less than 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a very short period of time, and these are the PCR components which are required for this process. That is, DNA template is required, of course. We need a target sequence, we need primers to initiate the process, that is annealing. For the annealing we are requiring the primers. Then DNA polymerase is an enzyme which always, most of the time it is Taq polymerase. Taq polymerase because it is derived from the Thermus aquaticus bacteria, right. Then we need DNTPs. DNPTs is deoxynucleotide triphosphate, that is your nucleotides, ATGC. And we need to have buffers, we need to have cofactors. Now this amplification process in an exponential process. Exponential, that means with one sequence we get 2, with 2 we get 4, and with 4 we are getting 8, and from 8, 16, 32 and so on. So this kind of amplification is an exponential one. This is an exponential one. Now this again is an important part which you need to know. This is exponential. Exponential, EN, okay. So PCR amplification technique is an exponential process, you need to remember this. We are moving to the next question. Which of the following is the most sensitive marker in first 2 to 4 hours of myocardial infarction? Now we know that the first biomarker which raises in myocardial infarction is your myoglobin, but myoglobin is not there in the option. Then the second thing which raises earliest and which rises, makes it peak earliest, is your CKMB, okay. Now the word which they have used is most sensitive. So sensitive, when they are saying, they mean two things here. Sensitive is the earliest to be diagnosed. That means which biomarker can be used to the earliest to diagnose. And sensitivity in respect to PSM is for the one which assesses the true positive patients, right. So if we are taking that true positive thing also, CKMB has 95% sensitivity as compared to others, which is very much less than the 95%, okay. And the earliest, the one which gives the earliest diagnosis is your CKMB. Answer is CKMB. LDH of course is not even that specific also. TROP-T is also not the option, but this is the nearest option which you could have marked. But then you need to remember that CKMB is the one, better one than TROP-T, earliest to be used, and the peak also comes early, earlier than TROP-T. The next one is pro-BNP, that is pro-brain natriuretic factor. Again, this is not the one which gets early rise. So this is the graph which you have seen also. But the thing you have to remember here is myoglobin is the first one, first biomarker to rise. CKMB is the next one. CK also is written here. So this CK is including all the 3 isoenzymes of CK, that is your MM, MB and BB. MM, MB and BB. These are the isoenzymes of CK, right? So CK is earlier rising and earlier peaking also, but CK-MB is the one which is specific for the myocardial infarction, specific for the cardiac muscles, okay. So we will choose the CK-MB part. If you see, LDH is rising also very slowly, going the peak also is very slow. TROP-T again is almost the same efficient competitor of CK-MB, but then again troponin is not as early as compared to the CK-MB, right. So you have to know this graph in your mind and you can come to the correct accurate answer definitely. So next question was about which of the following is a wrong statement about telomerase. So telomerase, very basic question, but what they have asked is the function of it or its presence in the cells, which was active in somatic cells, is completely wrong. We always remember telomerase is present in the stem cells, it is present in the cancer cells. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about the telomerase and telomere. We'll see the options. First, has reverse transcriptase activity. Yes, it has reverse transcriptase activity. That is why it has a RNA template inside it, which causes for the completion of the lagging strand. I'll explain you there. Found only in eukaryotes. Yes, it is only present in eukaryotes. And what is the reason that it is present only in eukaryotes is eukaryotes have a linear chromosome, right? So this is the telomere part, right? And in prokaryotes the chromosome is circular. So how can it have the ends, right? So that is why it is present only in eukaryotes. Maintains the length of chromosome, yes, because telomere is the one which is causing the shortening of the chromosome in each cycle of the division, right? And telomerase protects that. So it maintains the length of chromosome is also right. Active in somatic cells is absolutely wrong because it is present in stem cells, it is present in cancer cells. So they have asked us to choose the wrong statement, which is D. Now I am just telling you what telomere is. Telomere is the end portion of the chromosome which by removal, because this last part DNA cannot replicate this area, that means the telomere, it cannot be replicated. So in each division this part of the chromosome, this is not replicated, it shortens with that much portion. Next division again this much portion is shortened and finally the chromosome is shortening itself, and that is why many of them say that aging is due to this telomere, okay. Now telomerase is the enzyme which hampers this process of shortening, that is it maintains the length of the chromosome, okay. Let me tell you one thing here, that this is A triple G double T. This is the nucleotide sequence of one of this portion, okay, right. Now this portion is not replicated, so in every division it will get shortened. Now this is the telomerase enzyme. This is your telomerase enzyme, okay. It is having a RNA template, and that is why we said that it has a reverse transcriptase activity. So this will have a sequence complementary to this. Since it is an RNA, so it will have adenine to not thymine, but it will have uracil. This will be C, C, C and A and A. So this will be the sequence of this RNA template, right. Now with this activity, with this sequence, telomerase come in picture and it will cause the reverse transcriptase enzyme to act to hybridize with the nucleotides and form the chain in completion. DNA polymerase as always will come for the hybridization and ligase will come and will seal the nick, right. So this shortening is avoided, which happens due to telomere, okay, and it is present in stem cells, it is present in cancer cells. You have to memorize this. Next question was, which of the following depicts free energy change of an enzyme? of an enzyme catalyzed reaction. Now it seems there were 4 graphs, something like this. There were 4 graphs and A, B, C, D, they had asked which of them is enzyme catalyzed, which of them is showing the free energy change of an enzyme catalyzed reaction. Now I could not make any kind of this graph here because the enzymes, if I have to show you that this is catalyzed and this is uncatalyzed, I will be able to show you 2 and will explain you this complete fact and concept clearly in the figure. You have to use the brain how actually they had given the graph and you can just apply the knowledge. That will never go wrong. Okay. One thing we have to remember here is that the catalyzed reaction, that means when the enzyme is there, will always pull off your activation energy towards low. That means it takes down the activation energy toward the lower aspect. That means the activation energy is decreased. Okay. And the free energy change, which I will explain you in the diagram, will remain the same. You have to always remember these 2 facts and you can answer these kind of questions. Now I have no idea what kind of graph was given, but you can immediately come to the conclusion with this concept here that this is an uncatalyzed reaction, this is a catalyzed reaction. That means here the enzyme has not been used, here the enzyme is used and you can clearly see that the activation energy has come down. Activation energy for this enzyme catalyzed reaction is only this much and for uncatalyzed that is this much. That means the activation energy has been pulled down. Now what is this activation energy? Activation energy is the energy which is required to convert the reactants into the products. This is the amount of energy. And what is this transition state? This is somewhere in between the substrate and product. When the substrate is getting converted to product, okay. So that time this energy is required to pull it down to the product. And what is the function of enzyme? That is definitely it causes this activation energy lower. That means we require less energy. Less heat is needed if we have an enzyme in the reaction. Okay, that is the simple fact which you need to apply here. And one more thing which I always emphasize is your free energy change. Free energy change will not change at all if it is a catalyzed reaction or if it is an uncatalyzed reaction. Okay, so these 2 facts you need to remember about this particular thing and you can answer any question which is asked upon this concept. Because previously also this question was asked in a manner where they were focusing on the fact that the free energy change does not get changed. Okay. So, just simple thing that enzyme is causing the activation energy to come down. That means it is causing the heat or whatever we are using the energy to do the reaction. Enzymes, that is the reason we are using enzymes, right? As a catalyst, when it is doing an in vitro reaction, in our body also enzymes are there to fasten the reactions, right? So this was the base of this question. Next question was maximum thermogenic effect is seen with which of the following meal? So thermogenic effect is nothing but your SDA. SDA is your specific dynamic action, right? So specific dynamic action is the energy or the heat which is liberated when the digestion and absorption of the food happens. Now this is different for different active principles, that is your carbohydrates, fats, proteins and mixed meal. So you have to remember only one thing, that fats, they give minimum energy, that is minimum SDA is given, minimum heat is expelled out when you eat a fat rich diet, which is 0 to 5%. For carbohydrate it is 5 to 10%, for protein it is 20 to 35%. That is, with a protein rich meal, most of the energy, most of the heat is liberated out when you have a protein rich diet. Okay, when you eat protein rich food, you feel more heat, you feel more warmth inside your body, and that is the reason in winters we have protein rich food to keep our body warm, right? For the mixed food it is 10%. Now this is the fact which was asked and you had to clearly pick out the protein rich meal, because this produces the maximum heat when you eat a protein rich diet. So this is the concept which you need to know, and I had just explained you these percentages. Protein is having the maximum, fats is having the minimum, Mixed diet is having almost 10%. So, this much heat is produced when you have a diet rich in these basic things. Okay. We are moving to the next question. Which of the following processes in T1 diabetes mellitus, that is type 1 diabetes mellitus, with low insulin will contribute to ketogenesis and ketonuria? Now, type 1 diabetes mellitus, that means the insulin is low. Now, with the low insulin, which will cause the ketone bodies to rise? That is why ketogenesis and ketonuria. That means ketone bodies are very high in the body, and we know that ketogenesis and ketonuria happens in insulin lowered state, that means in diabetes, and it also occurs in starvation. So, this basic thing what we know is ketone bodies, when are they produced? So, the basic thing what you need to remember is when we have an excess of acetyl-CoA, because acetyl-CoA is the one, it is the initiating substrate to produce ketone bodies, right. So, if it is in ample amount in our body, then ketone bodies will be formed more. So, when will be the ketone bodies will be more? That means the acetyl-CoA is more in amount. Acetyl-CoA is given off by the free fatty acid degradation, that is your beta oxidation. When it is more, you have more of acetyl-CoA, right. Acetyl-CoA also comes from glucose. When acetyl-CoA is produced from the pyruvate, that is your link reaction. So, if more glucose is there, which is the case when insulin is less, that means in type 1 diabetes mellitus, you have less insulin, so you have more of glucose, hyperglycemia, okay. So, hyperglycemia is giving off you more acetyl-CoA, and acetyl-CoA TCA is almost saturated in those conditions. TCA is saturation. When I say, what do I mean? That means the NAD and FAD, they are in a stage of NAD H plus and FADH2, okay. They are saturated, and now what will happen with the excess of acetyl-CoA? It will go for the production of ketone bodies, right. So, let us see the options. Increased adipose tissue mobilization, of course. If adipose tissue mobilization is more, that means the adipose tissue is degraded more of beta oxidation is happening, will cause more of ketone body production. Increased fatty acid synthesis, no. Fatty acid synthesis is happening with the help of acetyl-CoA. So, acetyl-CoA is going and getting converted to fatty acid, that means acetyl-CoA is removed. So, it will not go for the ketone body formation. So, this will not be the option. Decreased shunting of acetyl-CoA to TCA cycle. That is what I was explaining you. That means if acetyl-CoA is not entering the TCA cycle, that means it is shunting out of the TCA cycle and more of ketone bodies are produced. Okay. So, this will also cause more of ketogenesis, stimulation of beta hydroxybutyrate synthase. So, this is the enzyme for the production of beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the third ketone body I say, because acetone, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate, these are the three ketone bodies. So, if we have more of this enzyme to form more of beta hydroxybutyrate, then the synthesis of ketone bodies will be more, okay. So, the answers should be this one and this one, that is A, C and D. Only increased fatty acid synthesis, because it will take acetyl-CoA for the synthesis of fatty acids, not for the synthesis of ketone bodies. So, the answer will be A, C, D. So, A, C and D are in option 3. This will be the answer. So, I am just trying to explain you the ketone body synthesis. It happens in liver, right, with the help of acetyl-CoA and glucose. They are giving acetyl-CoA. It gets entered to form ketone bodies instead of entering the TCA cycle, because as I told you, TCA cycle will be saturated in case of type 1 diabetes mellitus, right. Insulin is less in amount. So, now this ketone bodies will be excreted out in the urine and it will be excreted out from the lungs in the form of acetone, and in the extrahepatic tissues this is used as a fuel, okay. Liver, in spite of producing ketone bodies, it does not utilize ketone bodies. This is also one more fact you need to remember here. Liver is producing ketone bodies, but it cannot use ketone bodies. This is something which you need to know. This has come here, so I am just emphasizing. Now, this ketone bodies in other parts of the body is utilized as fuel. They use it, TCA cycle takes it inside first, getting converted to acetyl-CoA, okay. Ketone bodies gives off acetyl-CoA for the consumption, okay, and the TCA cycle will use it for the purpose of energy. This is a small pathway for the ketone body synthesis. So, what is happening is free fatty acid is giving off acyl CoA, that means this is fatty acid synthesis. Okay. So, fatty acid synthesis by esterification will form the triglycerides and it will also form phospholipids. Okay. Now, this fatty acid mobilization which was there in the option, this is going for beta oxidation to produce acetoacetyl CoA. Beta oxidation, we remember that 2 carbon at a time is given off and finally what we are left with is acetoacetyl CoA. Now, this acetoacetyl CoA gets converted to acetyl CoA. This also enters the ketone body synthesis. Here there is formation of cholesterol as well. Okay. But since I am talking about ketone bodies, I am not taking you that side because HMG-CoA is also a substrate for cholesterol synthesis. Now, if this is in excess, it will go, HMG-CoA lyase is the next enzyme which will give off acetoacetate and with the help of beta hydroxybutyrate dehydrogenase. In the option it was written beta hydroxybutyrate synthase. This is the same thing as beta hydroxybutyrate dehydrogenase. Okay. This will form beta hydroxybutyrate, your third ketone body. Okay. And what we get is beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate. This acetoacetate non-enzymatically forms acetone, which is another ketone body excreted out from the lungs, which gives a fruity smell in the case of diabetic ketoacidosis. Okay. So, this is how these 3 ketone bodies are synthesized, right. This acetyl CoA enters here to form the HMG-CoA. CoA-SH is removed, one extra one here, acetoacetyl CoA and acetyl CoA, this will form HMG-CoA and this HMG-CoA lyase will give off acetoacetate and acetone non-enzymatically and with this enzyme it will give off beta hydroxybutyrate. Okay. So, you need to have little of this figure and pathway you need to understand. Okay. Simultaneously, I have taken few things, don't get confused. This is the fatty acid synthesis part, esterified to form the triglyceride and phospholipids. Then beta oxidation of this fatty acid is happening to give off the acetyl CoA, which is introducing itself for the formation of ketone bodies. One thing more I told you here, please don't get confused, HMG-CoA is also a substrate for cholesterol. So, it can go for the cholesterol synthesis also, but in case of, and it happens as well, okay. But here in cases of diabetes with these pathway, it goes for the formation of ketone bodies, right. And ketone bodies, that is why, is maximum in case of diabetes mellitus type 1 and in starvation. This is another fact you need to always remember. Okay. So, the questions were not very difficult, we need just to know the basic things and we could have come to the answers. Okay. One more question was which type of alternative slide. Again, this question was something I could not come up with the proper question and options, but something definitely was asked about the RNA splicing because the figure was showing something like exons were there, introns were there and they were getting different kinds of protein. So, what you need to understand here is RNA splicing. So, RNA splicing is nothing but the removal of introns and exons, they come in combine in different positions. Like if one exon is removed, we get another protein. Suppose in this figure if you see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 5 exons, when they combine together, removing of the introns, this middle portion are the introns. When these are removed, we get a protein, suppose protein A. Now, if I remove this 3 exon here, I get another protein which is 1, 2, 4 and 5. If I remove 4 here, I get another protein, protein C, that is 1, 2, 3 and 5. So, this is RNA splicing, alternative RNA splicing we call. So, something was asked here, we need to have a basic concept about the RNA splicing. So, the options which is given here is exon skipping. Exon here is skipped, of course, in protein B and C. There is skipping of 3 and 4 exons. So, this is correct. No exon skipping cannot be the answer. intron retention. So, sometimes a damaged protein or an alternative protein is formed when the intron is inside the protein. That means intron is retention or intron retention is there. Okay. So, intron retention in these two protein is not there, introns are completely removed. So, this will not be the option. Then both exon skipping and intron retention of course is not there. Exon skipping is only there, so we will tick the A option. What you need to remember is alternative RNA splicing. That means when you remove different exons, if one exon is removed, you get one protein. If that is retained and another exon is removed, you get another protein. If intron retention is there, you get another protein, right? So, this concept you need to know. Then you could have answered the question. Now, one very simple question, this is not even the level of MBBS. This was asked, but you need to know how it would have been answered. Compare the normality of 2 millimole of HCl and 1 millimole of H2SO4. So, normality, the formula is M, N, M is molarity, N is the equivalent number, okay. So, the normality of HCl and molarity of HCl is same, since we have only one H here. Molarity of H2SO4 is 2 because we have 2H here, right. So, for HCl 2 millimole, what will be the normality? It will be, this will be 2 into 1, and for H2SO4, this is for HCl. And for H2SO4, 1 millimole of H2SO4, that is 1, and the molarity is 2. So, this again will be 2, this is for H2SO4. So, both are having same normality, 2 and 2, right. So, the answer will be 2 times half, 4 times same, it will be same. Now, we had a question, which of the following will be increased in vitamin B12 deficiency. Now, vitamin B12 as such, it catalyzes two reactions, right. The formation of succinyl CoA from methyl malonyl CoA. So, if it is deficient, methyl malonyl CoA should rise, and that is why in B12 deficiency we have methyl malonic aciduria. And one more thing it catalyzes is the conversion of homocysteine to methionine. Okay. In this process, folate trap also happens. I will just explain you that fact. So, what we had to know was B12 deficiency will cause an increase in methyl malonyl CoA and it will cause an increase of homocysteine. Plus, because folate is getting trapped, so folate will also, the methylated part of the folate will increase. So, the option is methyl malonyl CoA, this will increase definitely. Succinyl CoA will not be formed, so it cannot be increased. Homocysteine of course will be increased because it is not getting converted to methionine. And methyl tetrahydrofolate, that is what I was talking about, that is the folate which is methylated will also increase. So, A, C and D, A, C and D, this will be the option. Now, let us just understand the reactions which are catalyzed by the B12 vitamin. So, homocysteine to methionine, this is catalyzed by methylcobalamin, that is B12, this is a coenzyme here. The enzyme is methionine synthase, right. And in this conversion, methyl tetrahydrofolate is getting converted to tetrahydrofolate. That is, this methyl group is given to homocysteine and this is becoming methylated. And that is why methionine is the universal methyl donor. You remember SAM, that is S-adenosyl methionine. When it is in that structure, it gives off methyl to the methyl acceptors, right. So, this is one reaction you have to always remember. I will give you one more figure which tells you little more detail about this and will explain us this folate trap as well in a better manner. One more reaction which I was talking about was methyl malonyl CoA to succinyl CoA. This is the reaction which is catalyzed by vitamin B12 as a coenzyme. Vitamin B12 is acting as a coenzyme for this reaction. So, if this is deficient, this will raise and will lead to methyl malonic aciduria. So this is what I was talking about, one carbon pool. If you remember this and if you understand this figure, you will be able to solve many things and you will understand many concepts as well, okay. So now this is the beginning. I always focus on this particular pathway for two things. One is for folate trap and one is for the methylation reactions. Let us understand methyl tetrahydrofolate. This gives off its methyl to the homocysteine to get converted to methionine. So methyl tetrahydrofolate first gets converted to tetrahydrofolate and gives off the methyl group to the vitamin B12. This is how they are interrelated. Now this vitamin B12 will be getting converted to methyl cobalamin. This methyl cobalamin is given to homocysteine to give off methionine. This is methylated. Now this methionine is getting converted to S-adenosyl methionine, which is the universal methyl donor. Now the SAM will give off methyl to any methyl acceptor to give off methylated product, okay. So this is about methylation, how this methyl tetrahydrofolate, in this methyl tetrahydrofolate is giving the methyl group to the methyl acceptors finally, giving off first to B12, then to homocysteine, homocysteine getting converted to methionine, to SAM, and SAM is now giving off the methyl group. One thing this very important. And now folate trap. How is folate getting trapped? Now if you have a deficiency of this vitamin B12, if this is deficient, that means the methyl tetrahydrofolate will not be getting converted to tetrahydrofolate, okay. So this folate is trapped in the form of methyl tetrahydrofolate. Then we have a deficiency of this as well, because this is completely trapped in the form of methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this is what we call as folate trap. So with this pathway we can understand the folate trap as well. That is why we say that vitamin B12 will lead to a deficiency of folic acid as well. So this is what you need to remember, that vitamin B12 that catalyzes only two reactions. This particular one for the methylation of homocysteine to methionine and another one which is methyl malonyl CoA to succinyl CoA, right. This is all which was there in your INI CET 2020 biochemistry. So for your forthcoming exam, for your pre-PG exams, I would just like to tell you one thing, that just concentrate on the basics and concepts. If you have that in ample amount, you can answer any questions, and very basic things are asked in a complicated manner these days. So don't worry about the complicated questions. There is nothing like complicated questions. These are basic questions which are asked in a complicated manner, okay. So you need to have that zest in your mind that my facts and my concepts, if it is clear, I can crack any exam. Alright, so all the best, and I complete it here. Thank you so much.